The courtroom buzzed with tension, thick enough to choke the air itself. Every seat in the old marble-walled courtroom of Detroit's 36th District Court was filled, a mixture of anxious community members, curious journalists, and disinterested city officials. All eyes fixed on Judge Robert McKinley, known for his scathing rebukes and an ego larger than the bench he presided over. Anthony Bennett sat nervously behind the defense table, his wrists bearing the invisible weight of the handcuffs he'd worn days before. His crime? Being accused by Victor Wainwright, the city's notorious real estate tycoon, of stealing expensive equipment from a local school. An absurd claim, but in Detroit, Wainwright's word was law. Anthony glanced back at his family, his eyes meeting those of his 18-year-old daughter, Alicia. She nodded calmly, her youthful face unflinching, determination etched in every line. As the bailiff called for silence, Alicia stood, dressed simply in jeans and a blazer. Her presence stirred whispers among the crowd. They had expected a seasoned lawyer, perhaps someone as formidable as Wainwright's legal team. Instead, they saw a slender, unassuming black teenager approaching the judge's bench. Judge McKinley squinted over his reading glasses, his voice dripping with disdain. "Young lady, the gallery is behind you. Return to your seat unless you plan on joining your father behind bars for contempt." Murmurs of laughter scattered across the courtroom. Alicia didn't flinch, raising her voice just enough to command attention. "Your Honor, my name is Alicia Bennett. I am representing my father in this case." McKinley chuckled loudly, his voice echoing mockery. "Representing? What is this? A high school mock trial? Miss Bennett, I suggest you stop playing games. Your father's case is not child's play. Go home and let real attorneys handle this." Alicia felt every eye on her. Judgments passed silently but loudly. Yet, her voice remained steady as she held up a set of documents. "Your Honor, these documents confirm I have been granted legal authority to represent my father under Michigan law. I have passed the bar exam." The judge interrupted with a dismissive wave. "A teenage girl claiming to be a lawyer. This court has no time for your theatrics. These credentials look fake to me, or at best, laughable. I will not allow this mockery in my courtroom." Laughter grew louder. The prosecutor smirked triumphantly, while Wainwright leaned back arrogantly, savoring the humiliation. But Alicia stepped closer, her eyes locked defiantly with McKinley's. "With all due respect, Your Honor, my age does not define my competence. I stand here not as a teenager, but as an attorney demanding justice for an innocent man. My father is falsely accused, and I intend to prove that. Mock me if you wish, but justice will not be silenced today." The courtroom quieted suddenly, struck by the conviction in her voice. Judge McKinley's expression darkened, sensing defiance he wasn't accustomed to. He leaned forward, voice dripping venom. "I will give you one chance, Miss Bennett. But if this is a game, if you are wasting this court's time, you'll regret the day you walked into my courtrooms." Alicia met his challenge with a calm nod. "Thank you, Your Honor. I assure you, the truth is never a waste of time." Whispers erupted again, confusion mingling with admiration from some. Alicia returned to her table, taking her seat beside her stunned father. He squeezed her hand, his eyes moist with a blend of pride and fear. "What are you doing, Alicia?" Anthony whispered desperately. "You can't fight these people alone." Alicia met his gaze, eyes reflecting a quiet strength far beyond her years. "I'm not alone, Dad. Grandma always said that justice was a battle worth fighting, and I'm ready." From across the aisle, Victor Wainwright watched her carefully, a flicker of unease hidden behind his smug smile. Something about this young woman disturbed him, though he quickly brushed it aside as foolish bravado. Judge McKinley called the court to order, frustration evident in his voice. Very well. Since Miss Bennet insists on embarrassing herself, the prosecution may present its opening statement. The prosecutor rose, launching into a polished narrative painting Anthony Bennet as a desperate thief. But Alicia listened intently, jotting down notes, unshaken by the slander. Her composure surprised even the journalists, scribbling furiously from the back rows. When it was her turn, Alicia rose gracefully, her voice clear and confident. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my father is not a thief. He's a victim of a powerful man seeking to silence our community. I am young, yes, but today, I am not here to be mocked or pitied. I'm here to ensure that the law protects the innocent, regardless of their race, their background, or their status. She turned sharply towards Judge McKinley, words striking deliberately. And despite any prejudice we may face, justice must prevail. That's what my grandmother fought for in this very city. And that's what I will fight for, too. The courtroom fell silent. McKinley's knuckles whitened, gripping his gavel tightly. He glared at Alicia, hatred simmering beneath the surface. Be very careful, Miss Bennet, he sneered quietly. You're walking a dangerous line. Alicia met his threat with a resolute smile. Justice always is dangerous, Your Honor, but it's a risk worth taking. She sat down, feeling the weight of the room shift in her favor, even if only slightly. The whispers grew softer, admiration mixing with skepticism. Alicia knew the road ahead was perilous, but the fire in her chest burned brighter than ever. Outside the courthouse, news vans lined up, already spinning headlines about the teenage lawyer defying the powerful Judge McKinley. Inside, Alicia understood that her battle had only just begun. But this was no longer just about defending her father. It had become something greater, a fight to challenge the very corruption embedded within Detroit's legal system. As the court adjourned for the day, Alicia walked out, head held high, ignoring the mocking glances. But deep down, she felt the tremors of anxiety. Judge McKinley wasn't her only opponent. She faced a system stacked against her, and powerful forces determined to keep her quiet. Yet, recalling her grandmother's fearless legacy, she felt a quiet reassurance. Alicia knew this was just the beginning. She would prove them all wrong, and justice, no matter how mocked or threatened, would be heard. As the evening settled over Detroit, Alicia retreated to the comforting yet cramped confines of her family's small, modest home. Her father, Anthony, sat quietly in the living room, staring blankly at the television, the news replaying clips from the courthouse. His face was weary, etched with the pain of public humiliation, but also touched by newfound pride in his daughter. Beside him, Sir Grace Bennet, Alicia's mother, gently rubbed his back, her gaze filled with quiet strength, masking her deep anxiety. Alicia slipped into her tiny room, lined with stacks of legal books, old, yellowed, and heavily annotated. These books once belonged to her grandmother, Evelyn Bennet, a woman whose name still echoed through Detroit's civil rights circles. Alicia had grown up hearing stories of Evelyn's fierce determination, her relentless battles against prejudice and corruption. Now, she was walking in her grandmother's footsteps, carrying the burden and blessing of a legacy that felt both inspiring and terrifying. She gently picked up an old photograph framed beside her desk. Evelyn stood proudly in a courtroom, a determined fire in her eyes, unyielding despite the dismissive glares of judges and prosecutors. Alicia traced her grandmother's face, whispering softly, "I hope I'm making you proud." A soft knock drew her attention. Grace entered, closing the door gently behind her. Her mother's usually calm expression was taut with worry. "Alicia, can we talk?" Of course, Mom, Alicia replied, sensing the gravity in her mother's voice. Grace sat on the edge of Alicia's small bed, sighing deeply. Honey, you were incredibly brave today. I've never been prouder of you. But her voice trailed off, worry lining her face. You're up against some dangerous people. Your father and I are worried. Wainwright isn't someone you should take lightly. Alicia met her mother's gaze, steady and unflinching. I know, Mom, but Grandma didn't back down when she faced worse. I can't let Dad suffer because we're scared. They're counting on that fear. They think we're powerless. Grace squeezed Alicia's hand tightly. Your grandmother was remarkable, but even she suffered greatly. The threats, the pressure, it nearly broke her. We just don't want you to experience that kind of pain. Alicia felt a lump form in her throat. She'd heard the stories about how Evelyn had been harassed, threatened, and publicly humiliated by powerful men, desperate to silence her. But Evelyn had stood firm, never letting fear define her actions. That courage was something Alicia deeply admired, but also feared she might not have enough of herself. I understand, Mom, Alicia whispered, but Grandma taught us that justice only comes when we're brave enough to stand for it. If I don't fight this, who will? They'll keep trampling over us, thinking we can't fight back. Grace nodded silently, tears shimmering in her eyes. You remind me so much of her. Just promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks. Alicia hugged her mother tightly, feeling Grace's fear in her trembling embrace. I promise, Mom, I'll be careful. But I have to do this, not just for Dad, but for everyone Wainwright and people like him have oppressed. Grace pulled back slightly, looking deep into Alicia's eyes. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. Alicia felt a warmth bloom inside her chest. I hope so. After Grace left, Alicia returned to her desk, flipping through Evelyn's worn-out books, their margins filled with annotations, reminders of battles fought long before Alicia was born. One passage, heavily underlined, caught her attention. Justice demands courage, and courage demands sacrifice. Beside it, Evelyn had scribbled in faded ink, never let them see you waver. Alicia took a deep breath, absorbing those words like armor. As if summoned by fate, she heard her father's gentle knock at her door. Anthony entered hesitantly, his expression torn between pride and guilt. Alicia, I don't know if I can ever thank you enough, he began, his voice trembling. But maybe this is too much for you. I never wanted you dragged into this mess. If anything happens, Dad, please. Alicia interrupted gently. You didn't drag me into this. This is exactly why I studied law, why Grandma wanted me to have those books. She knew one day I'd need them. Anthony's shoulders slumped, weighed down by the injustice pressing upon him. You should be enjoying your youth, not fighting battles meant for someone twice your age. Alicia took his hand, squeezing it reassuringly. I chose this, Dad. I chose to fight for you. For us. Grandma fought, so I wouldn't have to face this kind of discrimination. But I guess the fight isn't over yet. Anthony sighed deeply, looking around Alicia's room, the walls filled with academic awards and framed pictures of Evelyn Bennett, standing tall amidst protesters. His eyes lingered on one photo in particular. Evelyn, arm raised defiantly outside City Hall during the height of the civil rights movement. Your grandmother faced so much worse, Anthony murmured. But she never backed down. I just never thought you'd have to face the same battles in your generation. Alicia stood, joining him by the wall. Maybe it's a battle each generation has to fight, but at least I'm not alone. Anthony smiled softly, pulling his daughter into a tight embrace. "No, you're not. And no matter what happens, I'm proud of you." As he left, Alicia's phone buzzed unexpectedly. She glanced at the screen. An unknown number. Hesitating briefly, she answered. "Miss Bennett?" a hesitant female voice whispered. "My name is Nina Martinez. You don't know me, but I work at City Hall. I saw you in court today and, well, there's something you need to know. But it's risky. Can we meet?" Alicia's heart raced. What kind of information? Nina's voice trembled with fear. "About your father's case. There's a conspiracy involving Wainwright, the deputy mayor, and even Judge McKinley. They're using your father to scare the neighborhood into selling their homes. It's bigger than just him." Alicia felt chills run down her spine. "How do I know I can trust you?" "Because I was like you once," Nina said quietly. "I wanted to fight the corruption, but I got scared. Seeing you today reminded me of why I wanted to make a difference. Please, let me help you." Alicia paused, then made her decision. "All right. Where do we meet?" "Tomorrow morning, early. At the park, behind your neighborhood. No phones, no cameras. And Miss Bennett, be careful. They're watching you." As the call ended, Alicia's heart pounded wildly. Her fight had just grown more dangerous, but now she knew she wasn't alone. She had allies, unlikely, unexpected, but powerful in their own right. She glanced back at Evelyn's photograph, the determination in her grandmother's eyes, now mirrored in her own. "I'm ready," Alicia whispered, clutching the phone tightly. "I'm not backing down." Outside her window, Detroit's streets were quiet, deceptively calm. But Alicia knew a storm was brewing, and she intended to face it head-on, just like Evelyn had decades ago. The dawn in Detroit broke with a pale, reluctant light. Alicia had barely slept, her mind racing with the weight of Nina Martinez's words from the night before. A conspiracy, one involving Judge McKinley, Victor Wainwright, and even Deputy Mayor Harris, was bigger and darker than she'd ever imagined. Alicia knew the road ahead was treacherous, but her resolve was unshaken. Her father's freedom depended on unraveling this tangled web of deceit. Early that morning, she wrapped herself in a warm coat and headed to the small park, tucked away behind her neighborhood. The cold bit into her skin, her breath visible in the crisp air. The park was deserted at this hour, save for a lone figure bundled in a heavy jacket, nervously pacing near a rusted swing set. Alicia approached cautiously. "Nina?" Alicia asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman turned sharply, eyes filled with fear. Nina Martinez was young, maybe in her early 30s, with tired eyes that seemed haunted by things she'd seen and couldn't unsee. She nodded, glancing around anxiously before speaking. "I'm sorry to drag you out here, Alicia," Nina said, her voice trembling, "but I can't risk being seen. If they find out I'm talking to you—" "I understand," Alicia reassured her. "Tell me everything." Nina took a shaky breath. "I work as an assistant in Deputy Mayor Harris's office. A few weeks ago, I overheard a conversation between Harris, Wainwright, and Judge McKinley. Your father's arrest was no accident. It was planned, orchestrated to pressure families in your neighborhood into selling their homes to Wainwright. He wants that entire area cleared for a new high-rise project. They're framing people, using the courts to bully residents into submission." Alicia felt anger boil up inside her. "My father is innocent. He never stole anything." "I know," Nina nodded sadly. "But they planted stolen school equipment in your father's workshop. Judge McKinley is on their payroll. He ensures their cases go smoothly. Harris facilitates permits, zoning, all the red tape. Wainwright provides the money. It's a perfectly rigged system." Alicia's hands shook with rage and disbelief. How can they get away with this? There must be evidence somewhere. Nina hesitated, glancing around again before leaning closer. There's more. I found out they're keeping digital records of their illegal dealings, emails, recordings, payoffs. But they're heavily encrypted and hidden on private servers. If you can get access to those files, you'll have enough evidence to take them down. How do I get them? Alicia asked urgently. Nina swallowed hard. You can't do this alone. I have some contacts, tech people who might help. But they're afraid. Everyone is afraid. Alicia's jaw tightened. We can't let fear stop us. Too many lives are being destroyed. I'll find a way. Can you get me anything, even a small lead? Nina pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket, slipping it discreetly into Alicia's hand. This is the name of someone who might help. Jamal Brooks. He's a computer expert, brilliant but rebellious. He hates the system as much as you do. But Alicia, please be careful. They're ruthless. I will. Alicia promised, squeezing Nina's hand in gratitude. Thank you for risking so much. Nina smiled weakly. Just don't let them win. Later that afternoon, Alicia returned home, her thoughts swirling with the enormity of what she'd learned. As she entered, Anthony sat at the kitchen table, his usually strong frame bent under the crushing weight of the false accusations. Her mother, Grace, stood nearby, worry etched deeply into her face. Anthony looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and despair. Did you find out anything? More than I expected, Alicia admitted, sitting beside him. She explained Nina's revelations about the conspiracy, the framing, and the powerful figures involved. Her parents listened, their faces reflecting shock and outrage. Anthony's fists clenched tightly. All these years, working honestly, only for these powerful crooks to frame me like a common criminal. This city deserves better. Grace placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. We'll fight this. They won't break us. Alicia met her father's gaze with fierce determination. I have a lead, someone who can help us gather evidence. But this battle will be dangerous. They're ruthless and powerful. Anthony reached out, taking Alicia's hand in his. If you're willing to risk everything for justice, then I'll fight right beside you. Your grandmother always said that evil thrives when good people stay silent. Exactly, Alicia replied firmly, and I won't stay silent. That evening, Alicia made her way to a rundown apartment building near downtown Detroit. She climbed the narrow staircase, the dimly lit hallway smelling faintly of mildew. Arriving at apartment 304, she knocked firmly. A voice called out, cautious and wary. Who is it? My name is Alicia Bennett, she answered. Nina Martinez sent me. I need your help. The door creaked open slightly, revealing the suspicious eyes of Jamal Brooks. He was in his early 20s, with a defiant expression that matched his rebellious reputation. His gaze softened slightly at the mention of Nina. What kind of help? He asked cautiously. I need access to some heavily encrypted files, evidence of corruption involving powerful people in Detroit, Alicia explained. It's dangerous, but Nina said you're someone I can trust. Jamal stared at her for a moment before letting her inside. The apartment was sparse, cluttered with computers, servers, and tangled wires, a makeshift tech fortress. He gestured for her to sit, eyeing her skeptically. You're that teenager fighting for your dad, right? Saw you on the news? Jamal said, his voice laced with both admiration and doubt. You sure you know what you're up against? I do, Alicia said confidently. But I can't do it alone. Nina said you might have a way in. Jamal sighed, rubbing his forehead. I've been monitoring city servers for months, waiting for the right moment to expose the corruption. It's not just your dad. There are dozens of innocent people like him. But this is dangerous stuff. If they catch us, they won't, Alicia insisted. Not if we're careful. If we can expose them, we can save countless families, including mine. Jamal hesitated, torn between self-preservation and justice. Finally, he nodded. All right. But once we start, there's no turning back. I know, Alicia replied firmly. I'm ready. Jamal turned to his computers, pulling up complex screens of encrypted data. Their files are locked tight, hidden behind layers of security. But there might be a backdoor in their system. If I can crack it, we'll have everything. How long will it take? Alicia asked, her heart racing with anticipation. A few days, Jamal estimated. But we have to be careful. They're tracking anyone who gets too close. Alicia took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of what they were about to do. I trust you. Let's do this. As Alicia left Jamal's apartment, the city's skyline was bathed in the dying glow of sunset. The weight of the battle ahead felt heavy, but Alicia stood tall, feeling her grandmother's courage flowing through her veins. A storm was gathering over Detroit, a storm of truth and justice. And Alicia Bennett was ready to face it, no matter the cost. Alicia sat in the quiet solitude of Detroit's Central Law Library, surrounded by towering shelves lined with heavy leather-bound books. It was late evening, and the vast space was nearly empty, save for a few dedicated law students tucked away in distant corners. This place had become Alicia's sanctuary, where the words of her grandmother echoed in every page she turned. Evelyn Bennett had once spent countless hours here, fighting battles much like the one Alicia now faced. As she thumbed through legal texts, her heart swelled with pride and purpose. The soft sound of footsteps interrupted her focus. Alicia glanced up to see Jamal Brooks approaching, his backpack slung casually over his shoulder, his expression a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. I thought I'd find you here, Jamal said quietly, taking the seat across from her. He glanced at the mountains of books on the table, raising an eyebrow. Looks like you're preparing for war. Alicia smiled faintly. This is war, and knowledge is our strongest weapon. Jamal nodded, pulling out a sleek, compact laptop and placing it carefully on the table. Well, I've got some ammunition of my own. I've been digging deeper into Wainwright's servers. I think I found something big. Alicia's eyes widened with hope. What did you find? Jamal hesitated, leaning in closer, keeping his voice low. They're hiding incriminating documents, contracts, financial records, you name it. But they're heavily encrypted. It'll take time, but I'm getting closer. In the meantime, we have another angle. Another angle? Alicia asked curiously. Jamal nodded. Security footage from the school. Wainwright claims your father stole equipment, but if we can prove it was planted, it'll expose their lie. Alicia's pulse quickened. You think you can get access to that footage? Jamal grinned confidently. Already done. Turns out, Wainwright's team made one critical mistake. They underestimated how easy their system was to crack. Alicia couldn't help but smile. Show me. Jamal opened his laptop, his fingers dancing swiftly across the keys. A grainy black and white video appeared on the screen, time-stamped just after midnight. Figures moved quickly in the darkness, carrying heavy crates into Anthony's workshop, clearly visible from the school's parking lot camera. There it is, Jamal whispered triumphantly. They're framing your dad. Alicia watched, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. This is incredible. But we need to ensure it's admissible in court. Already thought of that, Jamal replied confidently. I downloaded it directly from the source, ensuring the metadata is intact. It's airtight evidence. Alicia exhaled deeply, feeling the first true surge of hope since this nightmare began. They never saw us coming. Jamal chuckled softly. No, they didn't. They're too busy looking down on us. At that moment, Alicia's phone vibrated urgently. She glanced down to see a flurry of notifications, news alerts flooding her screen. Her heart sank as she read the headlines. Judge McKinley had given a live interview, openly ridiculing Alicia's age and her credibility. Video clips of his sneering remarks had already gone viral. Unbelievable, Alicia murmured, anger flashing in her eyes as she played the clip aloud. On the screen, Judge McKinley, standing arrogantly outside the courthouse, scoffed at the camera. Honestly, it's a farce. A teenager playing lawyer, wasting the court's time. If this is what the system has come to, we're in trouble. The reporters around him laughed, amused by his mockery. Jamal's fist tightened in anger. He's trying to destroy your credibility. Let him try, Alicia said defiantly. He's underestimating me just like Wainwright did. Let them keep laughing. It'll make their fall that much harder. Jamal admired her courage, nodding slowly. They don't know who they're messing with. No, Alicia agreed, her voice steady with quiet fury. But they're about to find out. The next morning, Alicia woke to a barrage of social media posts mocking her. The public ridicule stung, but she pushed the pain aside, determined not to let their scorn weaken her resolve. Yet the harshest blow came when she heard her mother, Grace, softly crying in the kitchen, clutching her phone tightly. Alicia approached cautiously. Mom, are you okay? Grace looked up, wiping tears hastily from her cheeks. I shouldn't read these comments, but they're saying horrible things, calling you foolish, calling us frauds. I just worry about you. Alicia wrapped her arms around her mother tightly. Let them talk. Every insult just makes me more determined to prove them wrong. This isn't about popularity, Mom. It's about justice. Grace nodded slowly, drawing strength from her daughter's conviction. I know. You're stronger than any of them realize. Your grandmother would be so proud. Alicia smiled softly. That's all I need to keep going. Determined to fortify her case, Alicia spent the afternoon compiling a detailed legal brief, meticulously outlining the flaws in the prosecution's arguments. Jamal, sitting beside her at the library, marveled at her skill as she swiftly navigated complex legal jargon, her youthful appearance hiding the fierce intellect within. How did you learn all this? Jamal asked in genuine awe. Alicia paused, looking up thoughtfully. My grandmother. She fought these battles all her life. She taught me that the law is a shield for the powerless if wielded with skill. She sounds amazing, Jamal said sincerely. She was, Alicia agreed softly. And she never backed down, even when everyone thought she would fail. Neither will I. Jamal nodded, understanding. I believe you. Suddenly, a shadow fell over their table. Alicia glanced up, startled to see a reporter standing beside her, microphone in hand, cameraman behind him. Miss Bennett, we've been looking everywhere for you, the reporter began, eager for a scoop. What's your response to Judge McKinley's statements about your competence? Alicia stood up calmly, her eyes steady as she faced the camera. Judge McKinley's insults don't define me. They define him. Instead of attacking a teenager, perhaps he should focus on impartial justice. I may be young, but truth doesn't have an age. The reporter blinked, surprised by her confident reply. You believe you can win this case against such powerful figures? I don't just believe, Alicia replied firmly. I know the truth is stronger than power, and I'll prove that in court." The reporter, momentarily speechless, nodded. "Thank you, Miss Bennett." As they walked away, Jamal grinned. "That was incredible. You just threw down the gauntlet." Alicia smiled, adrenaline rushing through her veins. "They're going to learn not to underestimate me." That night, Alicia sat alone in her bedroom, surrounded by notes, legal texts, and Jamal's encrypted files. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her young shoulders. But she felt no fear, only the burning fire of determination. She looked up at a framed photograph of her grandmother on her desk, the strong, wise eyes of Evelyn Bennett staring back at her. "I won't let you down," Alicia whispered, feeling the power of generations of resilience within her. "No matter what they throw at me, I will stand tall." Outside her window, the city lights glittered like stars, offering quiet reassurance. Alicia knew the road ahead was treacherous, but she also knew one thing for certain. Justice was coming, and she would be the one to deliver it. The morning sun had barely risen when Alicia found herself standing on the porch of a modest brick house at the edge of her neighborhood. The paint on the door was peeling, the garden overgrown, yet there was a quiet dignity about the place, much like the woman she had come to see. Alicia took a deep breath, hesitating briefly before knocking gently on the door. Moments passed in silence until the door creaked open, revealing Emma Walker, an elderly woman in her late 70s. Her gray hair was neatly pinned back, her eyes sharp and wary behind thick glasses. Alicia had grown up seeing her around, always quiet, always alone, yet always watching. "Miss Walker?" Alicia asked softly. "I'm Alicia Bennett. You said you'd speak with me?" Emma studied Alicia carefully, her gaze scrutinizing the young woman standing before her. "Yes. Come inside. Quickly now." Alicia followed her into a tidy but dimly lit living room. Old photos of happier days lined the mantel, dusty but carefully placed. Emma gestured for Alicia to sit, then lowered herself slowly into an armchair, wincing as her joints protested. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Alicia admitted quietly, her eyes gentle but earnest. Emma sighed deeply, her hands trembling slightly. "I wasn't sure I should, dear. I've seen too much over the years, things that make one afraid to speak out." Alicia leaned forward, concern etched across her face. "I understand, Miss Walker, but your testimony could be crucial. You saw them framing my father, didn't you?" Emma's eyes clouded over with fear. "Yes, I saw those men, Wainwright's thugs, carrying equipment into Anthony's workshop that night. I watched from my kitchen window. I knew they were framing him. But if I testify—" She trailed off, voice shaking. Alicia reached out, gently placing her hand on Emma's frail, wrinkled one. "I know it's frightening, but my father is innocent. If we don't stand up to them now, they'll never stop hurting our community. People like Wainwright count on our fear to protect them." Emma nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know, dear, but I'm an old woman, and they've threatened me. They smashed my mailbox, left notes on my door, saying I'd regret speaking up." Alicia's heart clenched in anger. "I won't let anything happen to you, Miss Walker. I promise. My grandmother always said courage is not the absence of fear, but standing strong despite it." Emma studied Alicia carefully, the mention of Evelyn Bennett stirring a memory. "Your grandmother was a brave woman," she murmured softly. "I marched with her back in the day. She always said change required sacrifice." Alicia nodded, eyes burning with conviction. "That's what I'm asking now, not just for my father, but for everyone they've hurt. Will you help me?" Emma took a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes growing steely with determination. "All right, dear. If Evelyn could face them, so can I." Alicia smiled gently, feeling a surge of gratitude and respect. "Thank you. We'll protect you." As Alicia stepped outside, a familiar voice called her name from across the street. Nina Martinez, dressed inconspicuously, motioned her over urgently. "Nina?" Alicia asked, surprised. "What are you doing here?" Nina glanced around nervously, pulling Alicia into a secluded alley. "We don't have much time. Things are worse than you know." "What do you mean?" Alicia asked, pulse quickening. Nina hesitated, her voice low and urgent. "I overheard a conversation at City Hall. Deputy Mayor Harris and Wainwright aren't just after your father. They're planning something bigger, a massive land grab. They're forcing people out to sell the entire neighborhood to developers." Alicia felt her blood run cold. "That explains why they're framing my dad, to intimidate everyone else." "Exactly," Nina confirmed, fear in her eyes. "They're bribing and blackmailing city officials. Wainwright's got dirt on half the council, even the police. It's a conspiracy that goes deep." Alicia steadied herself, resolve hardening in her heart. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," Nina admitted. "But I know where they're hiding evidence. It's risky, but if you're willing, we might be able to get it." "I'm ready," Alicia replied without hesitation. "Tell me what to do." Nina glanced around cautiously. "Meet me at the City Records building tonight. I can get us in, but we have to be careful. If they catch us, they won't." Alicia interrupted, determination fierce in her eyes. "They're expecting a scared girl, not someone willing to fight back." Nina nodded slowly, admiration growing in her gaze. "You're braver than most." "I'm just doing what's necessary," Alicia replied humbly. "We're all in this together." Nightfall came quickly, wrapping Detroit in a blanket of shadows. Alicia arrived at the City Records facility, just as Nina had instructed, dressed in black, heart pounding in anticipation. Jamal waited nearby, hidden in the shadows, a backpack full of gadgets and tools slung across his shoulders. Nina appeared moments later, keys in hand, eyes alert. Quickly inside, they slipped quietly into the dimly lit building, rows of filing cabinets and computer terminals, casting long, eerie shadows. The air smelled stale, oppressive. Alicia felt a chill creep up her spine, adrenaline surging as they moved silently through the corridors. "Here," Nina whispered, unlocking a door labeled Archives. Inside, mountains of files and dusty boxes stretched endlessly. Jamal pulled out a small flashlight, scanning labels quickly. "We're looking for recent land deals, financial records, anything linking Wainwright to city officials." Minutes ticked by, each heartbeat louder in Alicia's ears. Suddenly, Jamal held up a folder triumphantly. "Got something!" Alicia rushed to his side, eyes scanning the documents eagerly. They detailed hidden payments from Wainwright's company to various city officials, secret land transfers, and illegal eviction notices. Her hands trembled with excitement. "This is it," she breathed. "We've got them." A sudden noise, a door slamming shut, startled them all. Footsteps echoed closer. "Someone's here," Nina whispered urgently. They froze, breath held tightly, as a flashlight beam swept through the room. Alicia pressed her back against a cabinet, praying silently as the security guard stepped closer, his radio crackling softly. After what felt like an eternity, the guard muttered something into his radio and moved on, footsteps fading away. Alicia exhaled shakily, feeling weak with relief. "Let's get out of here," Nina said urgently. "Now." They exited swiftly, escaping undetected into the night. Jamal clutched the precious folder tightly, eyes gleaming with triumph. Back on the street, Nina breathed deeply, relief washing over her face. We did it. Alicia nodded, adrenaline still pumping. They thought we were helpless. Now we've got proof. Jamal smiled faintly, holding up the folder. They'll never see this coming. Nina touched Alicia's shoulder gently. Be careful. They'll be desperate once they realize what we've done. Alicia's eyes hardened with determination. Let them be desperate. They pushed us too far. Now, it's their turn to fear. Later that night, Alicia lay awake, documents safely hidden under her mattress, her mind racing. Tomorrow the battle would intensify. Powerful forces would come after her with everything they had. But she was ready. She closed her eyes, hearing the comforting words of her grandmother once again. Strength is found not in power or prestige, but in the quiet resolve of ordinary people who refuse to bow to injustice. Alicia whispered into the darkness, feeling Evelyn's presence beside her. I will fight, and we will win. Alicia woke before dawn, the faint glow of early sunlight filtering through her curtains. Sleep had been elusive, her mind relentlessly replaying the previous night's close call. She sat up, stretching stiff muscles, her heart still pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The documents hidden under her mattress felt like a ticking time bomb, both a weapon and a burden. She knew she had to act swiftly. Today, there was no turning back. Jamal arrived just as the city began to stir, Detroit's skyline silhouetted against the pale orange sky. His eyes were tired but bright with resolve. He entered Alicia's home quietly, nodding a quick greeting to her worried parents, who watched silently from the kitchen, concern evident in their eyes. Alicia, be careful, Grace Bennett warned softly, her voice filled with maternal worry. I will, Mom, Alicia promised gently, offering a reassuring smile she hoped looked braver than she felt. Anthony Bennett remained silent, his expression haunted by the strain of uncertainty. Alicia approached him, squeezing his hand firmly. We'll get through this, Dad. Trust me. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening with unspoken gratitude. I always have. Jamal cleared his throat softly, indicating the urgency. We should move. Time's short. They left the house, walking swiftly through quiet streets, heading toward an abandoned building on the outskirts of downtown. The documents they held were a start, but they needed undeniable evidence, video footage, voice recordings, something impossible to dismiss. As they approached the dilapidated building, Jamal carefully checked their surroundings. Windows were broken. Graffiti sprawled across crumbling walls. He led Alicia around to a side entrance, hidden beneath overgrown bushes. Why here? Alicia whispered curiously, stepping gingerly through debris. I've been doing some digging, Jamal explained quietly, pulling a small lock-picking set from his backpack. This building used to be a storage facility for city archives, officially closed. But Nina hinted Wainwright's people might be using it secretly. If we're lucky, we might find more than paperwork. Something tangible. Alicia nodded, heart racing as Jamal skillfully picked the lock, the door swinging open with a groan. They slipped inside, the air thick with dust and decay. The faint smell of mildew permeated the dim corridor, lit only by shards of sunlight filtering through broken windows. Jamal pulled out his flashlight, illuminating rows of metal shelving, lined with ancient boxes and forgotten files. Their footsteps echoed ominously, the silence oppressive. Keep an eye out for anything recent, Jamal instructed softly. Anything that looks out of place. Alicia moved methodically, scanning labels, her pulse quickening with each passing moment. Suddenly, Jamal let out a sharp whisper. Over here. He pointed to a metal cabinet at the far end, clearly newer, incongruous in the sea of rust and decay. Alicia joined him quickly as he tested the lock. It's locked tight. Jamal's brow furrowed, determination sparking. Not for long. Using a small screwdriver and improvised tools, Jamal pried at the lock carefully. Alicia kept watch, every creak and distant noise amplifying her anxiety. Finally, with a soft click, the lock yielded. Jamal pulled the cabinet open, revealing a treasure trove of modern recording equipment, surveillance tapes, and external hard drives. Bingo, he whispered triumphantly, his voice tinged with awe. Alicia reached inside, grabbing a labeled drive. Mayoral Office Surveillance, Harris. Her hands trembled with anticipation as Jamal retrieved a portable tablet from his backpack, connecting the drive quickly. The screen flickered to life, showing crystal-clear footage of Deputy Mayor Harris sitting at his desk, engaged in a tense conversation with Victor Wainwright. Their voices came through clearly, each word incriminating and damning. "You assured me Bennett wouldn't be a problem," Harris snapped angrily. "If this goes public, we're finished." Wainwright sneered coldly. "Relax, Harris. McKinley will handle it. No one will believe that kid lawyer anyway. We'll push the neighborhood out within months. This city belongs to us." Alicia felt a surge of vindication, the weight of injustice briefly lifting. "We've got them, Jamal," she breathed, eyes shining with triumph. He nodded, quickly copying the file to a secure location. "Let's find more." As they sifted through additional files, the hairs on Alicia's neck prickled. A distant sound echoed faintly through the building. Footsteps. She grabbed Jamal's arm tightly, whispering urgently, "Someone's here." Jamal swiftly shut the cabinet, slipping the drives into his backpack. They moved stealthily toward the exit, hiding behind stacks of dusty boxes as two burly men entered, their conversation hushed but audible. "I swear I heard something," one growled, flashlight sweeping the shadows. "Probably just rats," the other grumbled irritably. "No one knows about this place." Alicia's breath caught, heart hammering so loudly she feared they'd hear it. Jamal squeezed her hand reassuringly, both frozen in silence as the men moved closer, their footsteps heavy, menacing. They stopped mere feet away, flashlight beams cutting across the darkness. Alicia held her breath, silently praying. Finally, after agonizing moments, the men turned, heading deeper into the facility. Alicia exhaled shakily, nodding to Jamal. "Now." They bolted silently, slipping outside into blinding sunlight, sprinting several blocks before finally pausing, gasping for breath. Relief washed over Alicia in waves, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Too close," Jamal muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "But we did it," Alicia whispered fiercely, grasping his shoulder firmly. "This evidence is undeniable. They can't ignore this." Jamal nodded, eyes blazing with newfound hope. "Let's get this somewhere safe." That evening, Alicia gathered with Nina and Jamal at Nina's small apartment, the tension palpable. They reviewed the footage, watched again, as Harris and Wainwright's words revealed the staggering scope of their corruption. Nina shook her head, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. "This could bring them all down," she murmured. "But releasing it now is dangerous. We need a plan." Alicia's jaw tightened in determination. "We'll confront them in court, publicly. They won't be able to deny it when everyone's watching." Nina hesitated, caution evident. "They'll come after you harder than ever. Threats, violence. They won't stop." Alicia met her gaze firmly. "They've already threatened my family, my home. This isn't just about us anymore. If we don't stand up now, they'll crush anyone who tries again." Nina studied Alicia carefully, admiration filling her gaze. "You truly are your grandmother's granddaughter." Alicia smiled faintly, pride mixing with humility. She taught me justice isn't given, it's fought for. Jamal interjected quietly. But we'll need backup, protection. The police are compromised. Nina nodded. I know someone who can help. An old friend, Detective Elijah Brooks. He's honest, not in their pocket. Alicia felt hope bloom. Then we contact him. Quietly. We'll present this in court, but we'll need someone trustworthy on our side. As darkness settled over Detroit once more, Alicia returned home, so weary yet resolute. Her parents met her at the door, worry etched deep into their faces. Are you all right? Grace asked softly. Better than all right, Alicia replied gently, her voice filled with quiet strength. We found something powerful. They won't get away with this. Anthony hugged her tightly, his voice raw with emotion. You amaze me, Alicia. Every day. She smiled softly, drawing strength from their support. Tomorrow, the world will know the truth. That night, Alicia lay awake once more, but this time fear had been replaced by fierce resolve. The evidence was ready, their allies forming. They would face Goliath, armed with truth and courage. Alicia whispered into the darkness, imagining her grandmother's proud smile. They tried to silence us, Grandma, but they underestimated our strength. And deep within, Alicia felt the quiet certainty that justice was finally within their grasp. The morning sun rose over Detroit, casting golden streaks across a city on edge. The courtroom was abuzz, packed tighter than ever, charged with anticipation. Reporters jostled for space, cameras focused eagerly on the entrance. Today wasn't just another hearing. It felt like a pivotal moment in a battle that had captured the heart of the city. Alicia stood outside the courthouse, taking a steadying breath. Today she wore a crisp black suit, carrying herself with newfound authority. Gone was the teenager the media mocked. In her place stood a determined lawyer, armed with truth and courage. Her heart pounded with a blend of nerves and excitement. Jamal stood beside her, offering a reassuring nod. You ready for this? She met his eyes, a calm certainty settling over her. I've never been more ready. They entered the courthouse, greeted by a flurry of camera flashes and shouted questions. Alicia ignored them, walking purposefully forward, her mind focused solely on the case ahead. As she stepped into the courtroom, a hush fell over the crowd. Even Judge McKinley, perched arrogantly on the bench, appeared momentarily taken aback by Alicia's transformation. His condescending smile faltered slightly, eyes narrowing with a mixture of disbelief and irritation. Alicia took her seat, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. The prosecution's table was crowded with a team of experienced lawyers, their expressions arrogant, dismissive. Yet, as Alicia organized her papers meticulously, she radiated a quiet confidence that unsettled even her harshest critics. All rise, the bailiff called sharply, the Honorable Judge, Samuel McKinley, presiding. As everyone stood, Alicia felt McKinley's gaze burn into her. She lifted her chin, unyielding. Today she refused to be intimidated. The judge cleared his throat loudly, addressing the courtroom. We're here for the continuation of the case against Anthony Bennett, accused of theft and trespassing. Prosecution, you may proceed. The prosecutor, a seasoned attorney named Richard Davies, rose confidently, launching into his arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Bennett was caught red-handed with stolen equipment belonging to Wainwright Enterprises, at a local school slated for redevelopment. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable. Davies' voice dripped with disdain, eyes flicking mockingly toward Alicia as he continued. The defense may be enthusiastic, but enthusiasm cannot substitute for facts. Scattered laughter erupted from Wainwright's supporters. Alicia remained unruffled, scribbling notes calmly, waiting her turn. When Davies finally sat, she rose slowly, feeling every gaze fixate upon her. "Your Honor," she began firmly, her voice clear and unwavering. "The prosecution claims my client was caught red-handed, but their evidence is based entirely on circumstantial assumptions, deliberate misrepresentation, and, most concerningly, fabricated information." Gasps echoed softly through the room. Judge McKinley sneered slightly, leaning forward mockingly. "Bold accusations, Miss Bennett. I hope you have proof beyond youthful idealism." Alicia met his gaze without flinching. "I do, Your Honor." She opened a file, addressing the jury directly. "Let's examine the so-called evidence. The prosecution claims that Mr. Bennett stole equipment owned by Wainwright Enterprises. Yet, official records from the school district show that the items in question, computers, tools, supplies, were actually donated by community organizations, not Wainwright Enterprises." Davies shifted uncomfortably, whispering urgently to his team. Alicia continued, gaining confidence with each word. "Moreover, surveillance footage presented by the prosecution, purportedly showing Mr. Bennett trespassing, has significant gaps deliberately edited out." She turned to Jamal, who quickly activated a projector. The courtroom watched as grainy footage appeared, time-stamped discrepancies glaringly evident. "Notice," Alicia said sharply, pointing to the screen. "Key moments are missing, seconds erased. Who benefits from this deception? Certainly not my client." The jury murmured amongst themselves, doubt seeping into their expressions. Alicia pressed on relentlessly. "Your Honor, I request that this tampered evidence be dismissed and demand an explanation from the prosecution." Judge McKinley hesitated, eyes darting briefly to Wainwright, seated arrogantly in the audience. Finally, he cleared his throat dismissively. "The footage's credibility will be considered, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, Miss Bennett." Ignoring his condescension, Alicia persisted, eyes blazing with determination. "There's more, Your Honor. The charges against my client are part of a calculated campaign to intimidate residents into selling their homes to Wainwright Enterprises. I have uncovered connections between Victor Wainwright, Deputy Mayor Harris, and even certain influential figures in this very courtroom." Davies jumped to his feet furiously. "Objection! Wild conspiracy theories?" "Sustained," Judge McKinley snapped irritably, glaring at Alicia. "Stay on point." Alicia nodded calmly, unshaken. "Then, allow me to present definitive evidence." Suddenly, the courtroom doors burst open dramatically. Alicia spun around, stunned as a young man strode forward confidently, approaching the witness stand. Davies smirked arrogantly, calling out loudly, "Your Honor, the prosecution calls a new witness, Jason Bell." Jason, a scruffy young man, sat smugly, shooting Alicia a cold, victorious glance, her stomach twisted with dread. Davies approached Jason theatrically. "Mr. Bell, please state your relationship with Anthony Bennett." Jason's voice rang out clearly, rehearsed. "I've known him for years, worked together on construction jobs." Davies nodded smoothly. "And can you describe the events of the night in question?" Jason smirked. "Anthony confessed to me directly. Said he'd teach Wainwright a lesson, that he'd take matters into his own hands." Gasps erupted around the courtroom. Anthony looked shattered, shaking his head vehemently. Alicia felt anger surge within her, yet she maintained her composure. Davies turned triumphantly toward Alicia. "No further questions." Judge McKinley eyed Alicia mockingly. "Cross-examination, Miss Bennett." She rose slowly, heart pounding but voice steady. "Mr. Bell, you claim my father confessed to you?" "Yeah," Jason replied cockily. clear as day. Alicia's eyes narrowed. Interesting, because my father has repeatedly stated he's innocent. Why would he confess to you, of all people? Jason faltered slightly. He trusted me. Yet you have a criminal record, Mr. Bell. Alicia pressed sharply. Theft, fraud. Why should this court trust your testimony? Jason's smugness wavered. Look, I'm telling the truth. Alicia stepped closer, voice unwavering. Are you aware that perjury is a serious crime? He swallowed hard, glancing nervously toward Wainwright's side of the room. I didn't lie. Then explain this, Alicia demanded fiercely, holding up a printed document. Phone records show calls between your number and representatives of Wainwright Enterprises 2 days before your sudden confession. Care to elaborate? Jason paled visibly, eyes darting desperately. Judge McKinley banged his gavel harshly. Enough. Miss Bennett, this is harassment. No, Your Honor. Alicia countered fearlessly. This is the truth. Mr. Bell was paid to lie. The jury watched intently, doubt clearly etched on their faces. Jason remained silent, panic-stricken. Alicia turned to the courtroom. This witness has no credibility. He's part of a desperate attempt to frame my client. The judge's face reddened with fury. Miss Bennett, you're dangerously close to contempt. Alicia met his gaze defiantly. The only contempt here is for justice itself. McKinley slammed his gavel once more, voice booming. Court adjourned until tomorrow. As the room erupted in whispers, Alicia sank into her chair, exhausted but resolute. Davies shot her a furious glare. Jason slinked away shamefully. Alicia felt a surge of satisfaction. Despite the ongoing battle, today she'd exposed cracks in their armor, ignited doubt. Outside, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Alicia stood tall, facing them squarely. Today was just the beginning. The truth will come out, no matter who tries to bury it. As Alicia stepped away from the crowd, Jamal approached, grinning widely. You were incredible. They didn't see you coming. She smiled faintly, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. They thought they were dealing with a child, but I'm not backing down. That night, Alicia returned home, greeted warmly by her family. Her father embraced her tightly, whispering proudly, You fought like your grandmother today. Alicia's eyes glistened with tears, pride mixing with resolve. Tomorrow we fight even harder. We're not done yet. And as darkness settled, Alicia knew this battle was far from over. But now, more than ever, she believed victory was possible. The morning arrived like a distant drumbeat, relentless and heavy with expectation. Detroit's pulse quickened as the Bennett case escalated from a local dispute to a symbol of broader corruption. Alicia felt the weight of that expectation the moment she stepped outside her home, greeted by a sea of reporters. Cameras flashed, voices clamored for answers, all echoing the same urgent question. Could a young woman, barely out of her teens, truly bring down a network of powerful men? Inside her modest living room, Alicia gathered her thoughts, the comforting scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen, where her mother watched anxiously. Her father, Anthony, paced the hallway, tension clear in every step. Alicia knew the stakes had grown even higher after yesterday's dramatic courtroom showdown. Judge McKinley was furious. Wainwright was desperate. The prosecution was scrambling. And now, her adversaries knew she wasn't backing down. Suddenly, Alicia's phone buzzed, an unknown number flashing insistently. Cautiously, she answered. A deep voice, smooth but menacing, spoke calmly. Miss Bennett, my employer would like a word. Who is this? Alicia asked sharply, pulse quickening. Someone who can end this circus, the voice continued coldly. Meet me at Jefferson Park. in an hour. Alone. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Alicia stared at the phone, heart pounding. Jefferson Park was isolated at this hour, a perfect spot for intimidation. Or worse. But curiosity burned within her. Perhaps this was an opportunity in disguise. Alicia dressed quickly, grabbing her phone and activating the voice recorder app. She tucked it discreetly in her pocket, took a steadying breath, and told her parents she'd be back soon. Their worried glances followed her out the door, but she moved with purpose. If her enemies wanted to escalate, she'd be ready. When Alicia arrived, the park was nearly deserted. Autumn leaves rustled softly in the crisp air, a quiet contrast to the storm inside her. She noticed a man sitting casually on a bench, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He exuded power, a dangerous calmness in his demeanor. His eyes met Alicia's as she approached. "Miss Bennet," he greeted smoothly. "You're as bold as they say." Alicia studied him warily. "Who are you?" He smiled slightly, extending a business card with the name William Gray, Special Assistant to Deputy Mayor Harris, printed neatly. Alicia's jaw tightened. "What does Deputy Mayor Harris want with me?" Gray chuckled softly, a sinister undercurrent in his voice. "Direct. I like that." He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Let's drop the pretense. You're causing quite a headache for some very powerful people. We'd like you to reconsider your strategy." Alicia's eyes narrowed. "Meaning what, exactly?" Gray casually reached into his pocket, pulling out a thick envelope. "Consider this a generous incentive to drop your accusations against Wainwright and the deputy mayor. Walk away now, and this is yours." Alicia's heart raced. The envelope undoubtedly held money, a blatant bribe. She steadied herself, realizing the danger she was facing, but also the golden opportunity before her. She kept her voice steady. "And if I refuse?" Gray's smile vanished, replaced by a chilling stare. "Then things get messy. Your family, your friends. Unfortunate things happen every day." Alicia's blood ran cold, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. "Is that a threat, Mr. Gray?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "Consider it friendly advice." She felt the recorder pressing against her pocket, capturing every damning word. She decided to push further, needing more concrete evidence. "Why protect them? You know they're corrupt." Gray's eyes flashed dangerously. "Corruption? It's called business, Miss Bennet. Detroit has always operated this way. You're naive if you think you can change it." "I intend to try," she shot back defiantly. Gray stood abruptly, glaring down at her. "Be careful. You're playing a dangerous game." With that, he walked briskly away, leaving Alicia alone, breathless but victorious. She had what she needed. As she returned home, Jamal waited anxiously on her porch. His eyes widened with relief when he saw her. "What happened? You all right?" She smiled weakly, pulling out her phone. "I got them. Deputy Mayor Harris just tried to bribe me. It's all here." Jamal grinned fiercely. "That's dynamite, Alicia. But it's also dangerous. Once this gets out, there's no turning back." Alicia nodded solemnly. "We passed that point long ago." The following day, the courtroom was even more crowded, charged with electric anticipation. Alicia felt eyes boring into her as she took her seat, composure unwavering despite the brewing storm. Judge McKinley, visibly agitated, called the court to order, glaring pointedly in Alicia's direction. "Miss Bennet," he began condescendingly, "I trust today you'll refrain from wild accusations and stick to facts." Alicia stood confidently, her voice clear. "I have facts today, Your Honor. Facts that implicate not only Wainwright, but also certain members of this city's administration." Gasps swept through the room. McKinley's face darkened. "Be careful, young lady. Unfounded accusations carry severe consequences." "These aren't unfounded," Alicia countered calmly, producing a USB drive. "With your permission, I'd like to play a recording for the court." Davies jumped up furiously. "Objection! We haven't reviewed this evidence." "Overruled," McKinley snapped irritably. "Proceed, Miss Bennett." Alicia connected the drive, and Gray's chilling voice filled the courtroom. "Consider this a generous incentive to drop your accusations?" Stunned silence followed, shattered only by the murmurs of disbelief. Alicia spoke directly to the jury. "This man, William Gray, is Deputy Mayor Harris's assistant. They attempted to bribe and threaten me into dropping this case. If Wainwright and Harris are innocent, why resort to bribery and intimidation?" Wainwright glared fiercely, fists clenched. The prosecutor looked aghast, unprepared for such damning evidence. McKinley banged his gavel furiously. "Enough! Miss Bennett, I warn you." "Warn me about what?" Alicia challenged boldly. "Revealing the truth?" The judge's eyes blazed with fury. "You're out of order." Alicia remained unmoved. "Respectfully, Your Honor, it's this entire court that's out of order." The jury watched intently, clearly swayed by Alicia's bravery and the damning evidence. Even Wainwright's supporters exchanged uneasy glances. Suddenly, reporters in the gallery scrambled to transmit the explosive news, headlines already forming. "Detroit's corruption, exposed by a fearless teenager." McKinley, red-faced, ordered an immediate recess. Alicia stepped outside, where cameras swarmed. Her calm voice echoed powerfully. "Detroit deserves better. Today, we demand justice." That evening, media outlets erupted. Footage of Gray's bribe attempt played repeatedly, igniting public outrage. Alicia watched from home, exhausted yet resolute. Her parents embraced her proudly, worry shadowed by fierce determination. The phone rang insistently. Alicia answered cautiously. "Hello." "It's Nina Martinez," came the hurried reply. "Alicia, you've rattled the hornet's nest. Wainwright's panicking. Harris is terrified. But be careful. Desperate men do desperate things." Alicia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "They've underestimated me before." Nina's voice softened. "I believe in you. Just watch your back." Alicia hung up, eyes hardening with renewed resolve. She knew the battle was far from over, but today she had struck a decisive blow. Corruption's dark veil was lifting, and now the city watched intently, inspired by her courage. Late that night, as Alicia lay awake, her phone buzzed again. A single message flashed ominously. "You should have taken the money." She swallowed hard, fear flickering briefly, before being replaced by fiery determination. Tomorrow, she'd fight harder. For her family, her city, and the truth she'd sworn to protect. No matter the cost. The city awoke, like a giant stirred from slumber, eyes wide, and focused on the courtroom battle that had turned Detroit into a cauldron of outrage and hope. Overnight, Alicia Bennett's brave stand against corruption had transformed her from an underestimated teenager into a symbol of justice. Her name was trending across social media platforms, dominating news cycles nationwide. The hashtag #Justice for Bennett surged, carrying voices from every corner of the country, rallying behind her cause. Alicia had barely slept. As dawn's faint light crept through her bedroom window, her phone vibrated incessantly. A flood of messages from reporters, activists, and strangers pouring in. But among those encouraging words lurked darker threats, anonymous, chilling messages warning her to back down. Each one only steeled her resolve. She stepped outside onto her front porch, instantly blinded by a storm of camera flashes and swarmed by reporters shouting her name. Microphones thrust toward her, a blur of questions flying through the air. Alicia, how does it feel to expose city corruption? Are you scared of retaliation? What will you do next? She took a deep breath, steadying herself amidst the chaos. Her parents stood behind her, silent pillars of support, their faces filled with pride, yet masked with worry. Alicia raised her voice clearly, firmly addressing the crowd. Detroit has long been silenced by fear and corruption. Yesterday was a turning point, not because of me, but because the truth finally spoke louder than power. A chorus of applause erupted. A reporter pressed closer, asking, "But aren't you afraid? These people threatened you." She paused, determination flashing in her eyes. "Of course I'm afraid, but fear won't silence me. The people of Detroit deserve justice, and that's stronger than any threat." Her words echoed across airwaves, inspiring a movement. Residents across Detroit, from struggling neighborhoods to city offices, felt a surge of hope. On street corners and in coffee shops, conversations buzzed with newfound energy. People shared stories of their own injustices, connecting through Alicia's courageous stand. As public support surged, Alicia knew retaliation was inevitable. Late that afternoon, while reviewing case files at home, the atmosphere shifted abruptly. Outside, the sound of squealing tires ripped through the quiet street. Before Alicia could react, a brick shattered her living room window, glass shards exploding across the carpet. Attached was a crumpled note, "Keep quiet, or next time it's worse." Alicia's mother screamed, covering her mouth in horror. Her father, Anthony, rushed to the window, his fists clenched. "Cowards!" he shouted furiously into the empty street. Alicia stood frozen, pulse hammering in her ears. The threat was no longer abstract. It had invaded her sanctuary, directly targeting her family. But even as fear coursed through her veins, anger rose stronger. She wouldn't be intimidated. Neighbors spilled from their homes, drawn by the commotion. They surrounded the Bennett residence, expressions of shock quickly turning into righteous fury. Among them was Emma Walker, the elderly neighbor who had promised Alicia she'd testify. Emma approached slowly, placing a reassuring hand on Alicia's shoulder. "They can break windows, child, but they can't break our spirit. We're with you." Others nodded fervently. One neighbor, Mr. Thompson, stepped forward, saying firmly, "We'll keep watch. No one's hurting this family again." Alicia felt a swell of gratitude. Her community, often forgotten and silenced, now stood firmly united against the powerful forces arrayed against them. Meanwhile, in City Hall, panic gripped Wainwright and Deputy Mayor Harris. The bribery recording had unleashed a tidal wave of scrutiny, jeopardizing their carefully constructed empire of influence. In a lavish office overlooking Detroit's skyline, Wainwright paced restlessly, yelling at Harris, "You said this girl was nobody. Now she's destroying us." Harris glared back, fear and desperation cracking his composure. "I underestimated her, but we still have leverage." Wainwright's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Use it. This needs to end. Now." That evening, Alicia received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the line was cold, detached, masking menace behind professionalism. "Miss Bennett, your courage is commendable, but dangerous. It's not too late. Recant publicly, and this nightmare ends for your family." Alicia clenched the phone tighter, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "You misunderstand. I'm not the one in a nightmare. You are. And it's only just begun." She hung up sharply, heart racing. Jamal watched her anxiously from across the room. "Who was that?" "Their latest threat," she replied quietly. "They're desperate. Jamal's eyes darkened. Desperate men are dangerous. Alicia met his gaze fiercely. So are we. The threats escalated rapidly. Soon after, a news van parked outside, a reporter urgently knocking. Alicia opened the door cautiously, wary of another trap. The reporter, a woman named Lisa Torres from Detroit's Channel 7, spoke urgently. Miss Bennett, my sources say Deputy Mayor Harris is preparing a smear campaign against you. They plan to discredit you in the media, claiming you falsified evidence. Alicia's blood ran cold. It was a familiar tactic. Destroy the messenger if you can't silence the message. How do you know this? Torres hesitated, then whispered, because they approached us to run the story. But not everyone in the media plays their game. I'm here to warn you. Alicia felt gratitude and fear swirl together. Thank you. Torres nodded earnestly. Stay strong. Detroit is behind you. As the van pulled away, Alicia knew she needed to act swiftly. They would fight dirty, twisting lies into reality if given the chance. She turned to Jamal, urgency sparking in her voice. We need to strike first. Get Nina on the phone. We're holding a press conference tomorrow. We'll expose their plan publicly. Jamal's eyes lit with resolve. I'll make the calls. The next morning, in front of the courthouse steps, Alicia stood proudly beside her family, neighbors, and Nina Martinez, who had become an ally in her fight. The crowd had swelled dramatically, a sea of faces watching expectantly. Cameras focused sharply, capturing every determined expression. Alicia stepped forward, microphone steady in her hand. Yesterday, my family was attacked. Today, powerful men conspire to silence me by spreading lies. But we won't be silenced. This is no longer about just one case. It's about who we are as a city. Corruption relies on fear, but Detroit is stronger than fear. I call upon each of you, stand up, speak out, and demand justice. A roar of approval rose from the crowd, her words echoing far beyond the courthouse, reaching living rooms, workplaces, and schools across the country. Alicia had ignited a firestorm, empowering others to raise their voices, turning isolated acts of defiance into a movement. Later, scrolling through messages of support, one stood out. A short video from a group of high school students. They wore shirts emblazoned with number Justice for Bennett, speaking passionately about how Alicia inspired them to fight for change. Tears welled in her eyes. This was bigger than she ever imagined. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alicia sat alone on her porch, quiet moments rare amidst the chaos. Her phone buzzed gently. Another message, this one anonymous, chillingly brief. You've gone too far. She took a deep breath, staring defiantly into the darkening sky. No, she whispered fiercely. You haven't gone far enough. With every threat, her resolve grew stronger. Alicia knew the hardest days still lay ahead, but she also knew one truth above all. Courage, once unleashed, was unstoppable. The courtroom buzzed with tense anticipation. Alicia felt every pair of eyes fixated upon her, piercing the thick silence. Today marked a critical turning point. The day truth would finally rise above the waves of deceit that had drowned Detroit for far too long. Alicia's confidence had hardened into resolve, her fear transformed into unwavering purpose. Judge McKinley sat rigidly on the bench, his demeanor now openly hostile. His usually composed face was flushed with suppressed anger, eyes narrowed, waiting for any opportunity to discredit her. Alicia met his gaze with defiance. She knew the next words out of her mouth would shake the very foundations of the case and his reputation. Your Honor, Alicia began firmly, due to compelling evidence of bias, I hereby move that you recuse yourself immediately from this case. Gasps echoed around the courtroom. McKinley leaned forward, knuckles white as he gripped his gavel. Miss Bennett, I suggest you reconsider your choice of words. Accusations of judicial bias are extremely serious. I understand the gravity, Alicia responded unwaveringly. But the evidence is undeniable. She stepped forward, handing a sealed envelope to the court clerk. Contained within is proof linking you, Judge McKinley, directly to Victor Wainwright's corruption. Financial records show sizable contributions from Wainwright-affiliated organizations to your re-election campaign. Additionally, we have documented private meetings between you and Wainwright during this trial. Clear violations of judicial ethics. The clerk's hands shook as he passed the documents to McKinley. The judge's face paled as he skimmed the pages, each word another dagger piercing his authority. Cameras clicked furiously, reporters scribbled notes, and the audience watched with bated breath. McKinley's voice trembled with rage and humiliation. This is outrageous. These allegations are backed by undeniable evidence. Alicia interrupted boldly, her voice echoing throughout the court. The people of Detroit deserve impartial justice, not a pawn of powerful interests. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Shouts rang out from reporters. Spectators exchanged looks of shock and anger. McKinley's gavel crashed repeatedly, the sound lost amidst the uproar. Finally, he rose abruptly, storming from the bench without another word. Moments later, an assistant announced McKinley had temporarily stepped aside, pending review of the accusations. Alicia exhaled deeply, shoulders easing slightly. The tide was finally turning. Later that day, Alicia met with Nina Martinez in a small cafe near City Hall. Nina's expression was a mix of excitement and worry. You did it, Alicia. You took down a corrupt judge publicly. That's historic. Alicia shook her head slowly. We exposed him, but it's far from over. Wainwright and Harris are still untouched. Nina nodded, placing a manila folder on the table. And that's where this comes in. After your press conference, more people are speaking out. This, she tapped the folder, is a bombshell. Deep inside sources reveal that Wainwright's corruption runs even deeper. Harris isn't just accepting bribes. He's actively blackmailing city council members, police, and even judges to do Wainwright's bidding. Alicia opened the folder carefully, eyes widening as she scanned the pages. Lists of names, dates, transactions, meticulously documented blackmail schemes implicating dozens of influential figures. How did you get this? Alicia whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. People trust you, Nina said softly. They trust that you'll do what others haven't dared. That folder holds Detroit's darkest secrets, secrets they want you to expose. Alicia felt a wave of determination surge through her. Then, that's exactly what we'll do. That evening, Alicia stood before a gathering of residents at a packed community center. Faces of all ages watched her eagerly. Neighbors, classmates, elders like Emma Walker, all united by a growing sense of purpose. Alicia spoke clearly, her voice echoing with strength, born of trials. This isn't just about my father or our family, she declared passionately. It's about dismantling a system built on fear, greed, and silence. But we can't do it alone. I need you, all of you, to stand up, to speak out, to testify. Detroit's power is its people. From the crowd, a frail hand slowly raised. It was Emma Walker, her voice trembling but clear. I've lived in fear for too long. I saw Wainwright's men plant that stolen equipment. I was too scared to speak up before. But I'll testify. If you can be brave, Alicia, then so can I. Alicia's eyes filled with pride and gratitude. Emma's courage sparked others. Hands rose one by one. Stories poured forth of harassment intimidation, and corruption, endured silently for years. Each testimony wove a tapestry of truth and defiance. As the meeting dispersed, Jamal rushed over excitedly. "Alicia, your speech, it's spreading like wildfire. People all over the city are posting, pledging to fight back. They're inspired by you." Alicia smiled, exhausted yet exhilarated. "They're inspired by each other. This isn't my fight alone anymore. It's ours." The following morning, Alicia and Nina sat in the office of Chief Judge Evelyn Harris, known for integrity and fairness. Judge Harris listened intently as Alicia outlined the details of their complaint against McKinley and the evidence against Deputy Mayor Harris and Wainwright. Judge Harris finally spoke, her tone serious. "These accusations are grave. If true, they threaten the very integrity of our judicial system. You understand the risks involved, Miss Bennett." Alicia nodded firmly. "I do. But the greater risk is silence." Judge Harris smiled slightly, respect shining in her eyes. "Then I assure you, an investigation will begin immediately. This city owes you a debt." As they left the courthouse, Alicia felt a shift in the air. The once unstoppable wall of corruption was fracturing under the relentless pressure of truth. But Wainwright's retaliation was swift and brutal. That night, Alicia's family found their car tires slashed, a clear warning. Yet, instead of instilling fear, these desperate acts fueled the community's resolve. The next morning, Alicia awoke to find neighbors standing guard outside her home in shifts, volunteers protecting the Bennett family day and night. Mr. Thompson approached her solemnly. "We're with you, Alicia. No one's touching your family again." Tears of gratitude welled in her eyes. The people of Detroit, once silenced, were now guardians of justice. That same day, a major turning point occurred. Nina received an anonymous tip, leading them to a hidden safe deposit box containing crucial evidence. Detailed ledgers, photographs, and recordings of Wainwright's blackmail schemes. The evidence was explosive, implicating Deputy Mayor Harris, police captains, city officials, and Wainwright himself. Armed with irrefutable proof, Alicia filed formal charges against Wainwright and Harris. The news exploded across media outlets. Reporters swarmed City Hall, public outrage boiling over. In a crowded press conference, the district attorney announced the immediate suspension of Harris and called for Wainwright's arrest, pending investigation. Alicia watched from her home, heart pounding with vindication. But just as hope rose, her phone buzzed ominously. A text message, anonymous, menacing, flashed on the screen. "You may have won a battle, but the war is far from over. Watch your back." Alicia stared fiercely at the threat, gripping her phone tightly. Jamal noticed her reaction, worried. "Another threat?" "Yes," Alicia replied, voice resolute. "But they don't realize. We've already won. They're just fighting to delay the inevitable." As the sun set, Detroit echoed with voices rising defiantly, refusing to be silenced. Alicia knew the fight wasn't over, but the tide had finally turned, and she was ready to ride it all the way to justice. A cold chill filled Alicia's home that morning, despite the golden sunlight streaming through the curtains. It wasn't the weather. It was the unsettling sense of danger that had crept into every corner of their lives. The intimidation had escalated from slashed tires and ominous texts to something far more sinister. The message was clear. Wainwright and his cronies were desperate, and desperation made them reckless. Alicia was awakened by urgent knocking at the front door. She rushed downstairs, heart pounding in her chest. Opening the door, she was met with the distraught face of Mr. Thompson. His normally kind eyes were filled with anger and sorrow. "Alicia, you need to see this," he said. stepping aside to reveal the destruction outside. The facade of the Bennett home had been vandalized overnight. Large red letters, scrawled across the white siding, spelled out threats and vulgar insults. Shards of glass littered the porch, a window shattered by a thrown brick. Anthony and Grace emerged behind Alicia, staring in silent horror at the desecration. Grace covered her mouth, eyes wide with fear, while Anthony clenched his fist in frustration. Alicia felt fury rising inside her, but also a steely determination that refused to be extinguished. "They're trying to scare us," Anthony muttered, placing a protective arm around Grace. "Trying to break us." Alicia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "But they won't. They can't." The neighbors had already begun gathering on the street, their expressions grim. Among them was Emma Walker, clutching her worn coat around her frail frame. "This ain't right," she called out firmly. "They're cowards, picking on a family just trying to stand for the truth." Her words resonated through the crowd, sparking murmurs of agreement. Mrs. Jenkins, who'd lived down the street for decades, stepped forward defiantly. "We won't let them intimidate you, Alicia. Not anymore. You've stood up for us. Now it's our turn to stand up for you." Within minutes, neighbors organized themselves into teams, cleaning up debris, scrubbing hateful messages from the walls, and forming a watchful guard around the home. Jamal arrived quickly, documenting the vandalism and notifying the police, though they doubted any action would follow, given the city's deeply rooted corruption. Alicia watched in awe, her heart swelling with gratitude. Even in their darkest hour, Detroit's spirit remained unbreakable. She knew then that this battle was no longer just hers. It belonged to every soul that yearned for justice and dignity in their community. As tensions mounted, Alicia couldn't shake the urgency to confront the source directly. The law had done its part, but Wainwright had made this personal. It was time for a face-to-face reckoning. She kept this plan to herself, knowing her family would try to dissuade her, fearing for her safety. That afternoon, after reassuring her parents and slipping past the protective neighborhood watch, Alicia took a bus downtown, straight to Wainwright's towering office building. Her heart pounded relentlessly, adrenaline surging through her veins. She wore a hidden recorder beneath her blazer, determined to catch every word of what would undoubtedly be a perilous conversation. Stepping into the grand lobby, she approached the receptionist with unwavering confidence. "I need to see Mr. Wainwright. It's urgent." The receptionist eyed her suspiciously, but dialed the phone. After a tense pause, she nodded. "He's expecting you. Top floor." The elevator ride felt endless. Each floor climbed brought her closer to the man who had nearly destroyed her family. When the doors finally opened, she found herself in a luxurious office, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Detroit's skyline. At its center stood Victor Wainwright, imposing and impeccably dressed, his face a mask of calculated indifference. "Alicia Bennett," he sneered, pouring himself a glass of scotch. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit? Tired of playing hero?" Alicia squared her shoulders, meeting his eyes unflinchingly. "I'm here to tell you to stop. Your threats won't silence us. The more you push, the more the truth will surface." Wainwright chuckled darkly, swirling the amber liquid. "Truth? You're naive. Truth is malleable, Alicia. It bends to power. And power is something I have plenty of." She took a step closer, voice unwavering. "Your power is crumbling. People aren't afraid anymore. Every act of intimidation only strengthens our resolve." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Careful. You're swimming in very deep waters. And you're drowning in them," she shot back sharply. "Your empire is built on lies and corruption, and I'm going to dismantle it." brick by brick. Wainwright's composure cracked slightly, anger flickering in his eyes. He set down the glass forcefully, stepping toward her threateningly. "Listen carefully, Alicia. Walk away now, and your family remains unharmed. Keep pushing, and you'll regret it. Understand?" Alicia felt her pulse quicken, aware of the recorder catching every threat. "Are you threatening my family?" His face twisted into a malicious smirk. "Call it friendly advice." "Here's mine," she retorted fiercely. "Surrender now, because justice is coming for you." Without waiting for a reply, Alicia turned abruptly, heart racing, forcing herself not to look back. She strode back to the elevator, adrenaline surging. Only when the doors closed did she exhale, hands trembling. That evening, she played the recording for her parents and Jamal. Each threat, spoken by Wainwright, echoed ominously through the room. Yet Alicia's defiance rang louder. Grace's eyes filled with worry, but Anthony's burned with pride. "You've got him, Alicia. This is the final nail in his coffin." Alicia nodded resolutely. "It's time the world hears exactly who Victor Wainwright really is." Jamal quickly uploaded the recording to secure servers, sending encrypted copies to trusted media outlets. Within hours, the explosive revelations began dominating headlines. Outrage swept through Detroit. Protests erupted outside City Hall, demanding Wainwright's immediate arrest. The public was finally seeing the ugly truth hidden behind his polished facade. Late that night, unable to sleep, Alicia stepped outside onto the porch. The neighborhood remained vigilant, small groups chatting quietly, their presence comforting. Emma Walker approached her slowly, smiling gently. "I saw the news. You faced down that monster alone. You've got your grandma's spirit, Alicia. Fierce and unyielding." Alicia smiled weakly. "I just did what had to be done." Emma took Alicia's hand warmly. "Don't underestimate yourself. You gave us courage again. This community was broken, but you reminded us we can be strong." Tears glistened in Alicia's eyes as she squeezed Emma's hand. "I'm only strong because of people like you, Emma. Together, we're unbreakable." At dawn, Alicia awoke to another unexpected sight. Outside her home stood dozens of Detroit citizens holding signs bearing messages of solidarity, defiance, and hope. Their voices rose, chanting calls for justice, echoing through the streets like a heartbeat of change. Even amid threats, violence, and corruption, the community had found its voice, inspired by one young woman's relentless courage. Alicia stepped outside, overwhelmed by the crowd's support. She climbed onto the porch steps, voice strong and resolute. "They've tried everything to break us, but here we stand, united, unafraid, unstoppable. Detroit is reclaiming its power." Cheers erupted, resonating through the city streets. Alicia felt a profound shift. They'd reached a breaking point, but it wasn't her who had broken. It was the chains of fear and silence that shattered, giving birth to a revolution driven by truth, courage, and an unyielding quest for justice. The air inside the Detroit courthouse was electric, charged with an intensity that hadn't been felt in years. Reporters swarmed the marble steps, television cameras lined the sidewalks, and crowds gathered with signs declaring, "Justice for Bennett," and "End corruption now." This wasn't just any trial. It had become a citywide reckoning, a day of judgment not just for Anthony Bennett, but for a system long infected with greed and prejudice. Alicia Bennett stood at the courthouse entrance, clutching her briefcase tightly. Today, she wore the dark blue suit, once worn by her grandmother, Evelyn Bennett, the revered civil rights attorney. Its tailored elegance gave her strength, as if Evelyn herself stood beside her, offering guidance. Anthony and Grace walked behind her, their faces tight with anticipation. They had endured so much pain, yet their eyes held a newfound hope. Jamal and Nina waited at the courtroom doors, each giving Alicia an encouraging nod as she passed. Inside, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Every seat was filled. Dozens more stood in the back, murmuring softly. Judge Eleanor Harris presided, an impartial jurist brought in from outside Detroit after Judge McKinley's forced recusal. She was stern but fair, untainted by local politics. Victor Wainwright sat with his high-priced attorneys, arrogance still etched on his face, yet a trace of unease flickered in his eyes. Deputy Mayor Harris sat beside him, visibly uncomfortable under the public's scrutiny. Alicia took her place at the defense table, spreading her notes carefully. She took a deep breath, her heartbeat pounding steadily in her ears. This was the moment everything led to, where truth would finally confront lies and justice would meet corruption head-on. The prosecutor began forcefully, painting Anthony Bennett as a desperate man guilty of theft, accusing him of orchestrating his defense through falsehoods and conspiracy theories. Alicia listened intently, waiting patiently for her turn. When the prosecutor finished, Judge Harris turned to Alicia. "Miss Bennett, you may proceed." Alicia rose gracefully, exuding confidence that demanded attention. She faced the jury directly, eyes sincere and resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the prosecution's claims. Today, I will not only prove my father's innocence, but also reveal the true criminals behind this conspiracy. Men who believed power allowed them to rewrite justice itself." She started methodically, dismantling the prosecution's arguments point by point, showing inconsistencies in evidence, proving Anthony was framed. Her voice was clear, precise, and relentless, laying a foundation of reasonable doubt. Then, she called her first witness, Emma Walker. The frail but determined elderly woman walked slowly to the stand, her testimony powerful and unshakable. "I saw them," Emma declared firmly, pointing a trembling finger toward Wainwright. "His men placed that equipment in Anthony Bennett's truck. They thought nobody noticed, but I did." The courtroom buzzed with shock. Wainwright's attorney tried to rattle Emma, attacking her credibility, but she stood her ground, unwavering. Her courage inspired others. Witness after witness came forward. Neighbors, school employees, city workers, each piece of testimony adding weight to Alicia's case. As the defense's evidence piled up, Alicia prepared her most potent revelation. She requested permission to play crucial audio evidence for the court. Judge Harris granted it, nodding curiously. Silence enveloped the courtroom as Alicia pressed play. Wainwright's cold voice echoed through speakers, openly threatening Alicia's family if she didn't drop the case. Gasps rippled through the audience. Jurors exchanged shocked glances. Alicia then played Deputy Mayor Harris's voice, unmistakably attempting to bribe her into silence. The jury watched in disbelief as these powerful men exposed themselves, their own words condemning them. Deputy Mayor Harris turned pale, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Wainwright clenched his jaw, eyes blazing with anger, cornered and desperate. Alicia turned to face the jury. "These recordings prove what I've claimed from the beginning. This isn't just about theft. It's about power, corruption, and intimidation. It's about men who believe they can silence anyone who dares challenge them." Just as Alicia prepared to rest her case, Victor Wainwright did something shocking, driven to desperation. He suddenly stood, shouting across the courtroom, "Miss Bennett, stop this nonsense. I'll make this simple. Name your price, and this ends now." An audible gasp echoed throughout the courtroom. Even his attorneys stared in horror. Judge Harris banged her gavel furiously, commanding order. But the damage was done. Wainwright had openly attempted bribery in front of the entire court. Immediately, Judge Harris ordered, "Mr. Wainwright, you're hereby held in contempt and under arrest for attempting to bribe counsel in my courtrooms." The courtroom erupted into chaos. Cameras flashed. Reporters scrambled for notes. Officers quickly handcuffed Wainwright, who struggled wildly, his polished demeanor utterly shattered. Deputy Mayor Harris bolted from his seat, attempting to flee, but was stopped by security at the courtroom doors. "Mr. Harris, you are also under arrest," Judge Harris declared sternly. "Obstruction, bribery, corruption, you'll answer for all of it." Amid the turmoil, Alicia stood steadfast, a beacon of calm strength. Her father and mother looked on, tears streaming down their faces, pride shining brightly. Justice had finally arrived, not merely through legal argument, but through courage, integrity, and unyielding determination. Within hours, the jury reached a verdict. The tension inside the courtroom was palpable. Alicia held her parents' hands tightly as the foreperson rose. On the charge of theft, we find the defendant, Anthony Bennett, not guilty. The courtroom erupted with joy and relief. Cheers echoed through the chamber. Anthony embraced Alicia tightly, whispering, "You did it, baby girl. You brought us justice." Judge Harris pounded her gavel lightly, allowing the outpouring of emotion. Then she turned her attention to Wainwright and Harris. "Your actions have deeply wounded this community. You both will face the full weight of the law. Bail is denied. You will remain in custody pending trial." As Wainwright was led away, Alicia caught his eyes. Defeated and humiliated, he snarled, but she saw the truth behind his anger, fear. His reign of terror was over. Outside the courthouse, Alicia stepped into sunlight, to an overwhelming sight. Thousands of citizens had gathered, cheering wildly, applauding her victory. Banners waved high, and voices chanted her name, "Alicia, Alicia, Alicia." Reporters pressed forward, microphones extended. "Miss Bennett, how does it feel to win?" Alicia paused, looking out at the diverse faces, neighbors, strangers, the young and old united. She spoke clearly, emotion filling her voice. "This victory belongs to all of us. Today, Detroit showed its strength, its resilience. When we stand together, truth always wins." Anthony and Grace stood beside her, beaming proudly. Jamal and Nina joined them, sharing embraces filled with triumph and hope. The city had seen justice done. Its people had witnessed a new day dawning. Late that evening, Alicia sat quietly at home, overwhelmed by the day's events. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and deep humility. The phone buzzed continuously, with congratulatory messages, but one call stood out. A national civil rights leader called, expressing admiration for her courage, offering support for her continued fight against injustice. Hanging up, Alicia felt the weight of her grandmother's legacy more strongly than ever. Evelyn Bennett had fought battles in this very city, facing prejudice and corruption, paving the way for justice. Now, Alicia was ready to carry that torch forward, brighter and stronger than ever. Detroit had faced its judgment day, emerging renewed, inspired, and unbreakable. For Alicia Bennett, this wasn't an ending. It was a powerful beginning. The morning after the historic trial dawned over Detroit with a newfound sense of clarity. The air felt fresher, the sunlight warmer, as if the city itself recognized the significance of what had occurred within its walls. Headlines from newspapers splashed proudly across the nation, read boldly, "Local teen lawyer, triumphs over corruption, justice for Anthony Bennett," and "Wainwright empire crumbles." Alicia Bennett stood at the kitchen window, gazing out thoughtfully, the newspaper clutched tightly in her hand. Yesterday had brought victory, but today felt just as crucial. A day of reckoning for those who believed themselves untouchable. Behind her, Anthony Bennett sipped his coffee quietly, still stunned by his sudden freedom. Grace prepared breakfast, her movements more lively than they'd been in months. She hummed softly, occasionally glancing toward her husband and daughter, her eyes glistening with pride and relief. A sudden knock at the door jolted Alicia from her thoughts. Opening it, she found Nina Martinez standing there, her expression excited. "Have you seen the news? It's everywhere. They're opening investigations into every deal Wainwright ever made. They're coming for everyone involved." Alicia smiled softly. "It's about time." Nina stepped inside, joining the family at the kitchen table. Jamal soon arrived, laptop in hand, excitement buzzing around him. "Check this out," he said, opening the device and turning the screen toward them. "They're calling it the biggest corruption scandal in Detroit history. They're even mentioning a complete review of all cases presided over by Judge McKinley." Alicia leaned closer, reading the article carefully. The media had uncovered additional evidence linking Judge McKinley to Wainwright's schemes, revealing bribes, hidden accounts, and even more victims, families who had lost homes, businesses forced into bankruptcy by Wainwright's greed. Suddenly, the television caught their attention as a news alert broke into regular programming. "This just in," the anchor announced urgently. "Former Deputy Mayor Harris has agreed to cooperate fully with federal authorities. Sources indicate he's providing crucial information linking several city council members to illegal activities." The room fell silent. Alicia exchanged glances with her family, realizing the extent of what she had sparked. Detroit wasn't just seeing justice, it was experiencing an upheaval, a cleansing long overdue. Days passed quickly, filled with press conferences, interviews, and growing public outrage. At the heart of it all, Alicia remained a steady presence, calm and composed, reflecting strength and wisdom beyond her years. Judge McKinley, who once mocked her openly, was now suspended, pending a thorough investigation. Television cameras captured his disgraced figure being escorted from his chambers, head bowed in humiliation. Alicia watched, not with joy, but with a sober acknowledgement of justice's impartial hand. In contrast, support for Anthony and his family grew exponentially. Flowers, cards, and letters flooded their home, expressing gratitude, support, and admiration. Alicia read each one carefully, humbled by the outpouring of love. Yet amidst the celebrations, a bittersweet moment remained. Alicia found herself repeatedly drawn to a small, faded photograph of her grandmother, Evelyn Bennett. She often stared at it, speaking softly, "Grandma, we did it. Your fight was never in vain." One afternoon, Alicia received an unexpected visitor. Opening the door, she was surprised to find Emma Walker standing there, holding a carefully wrapped package. "Mrs. Walker," Alicia greeted warmly, "please come in." Emma stepped inside slowly, her eyes filled with emotion. She handed Alicia the package, saying gently, "This belonged to your grandmother. She gave it to me many years ago, when she defended my family in court. She said it was a reminder to always fight for justice." Alicia unwrapped it carefully, revealing an elegant silver pendant, engraved with a small scale of justice. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching it tightly. "I'll cherish this forever." Emma squeezed Alicia's hand affectionately. "Your grandmother was a great woman, and so are you. She'd be incredibly proud." The two women embraced, bound by legacy, courage, and an unbreakable commitment to justice. As days turned into weeks, Detroit began to heal. Wainwright was formally charged with multiple felonies, bribery, conspiracy, extortion, and obstruction of justice. His trial date was set swiftly, with the city demanding swift accountability. His assets were frozen, his empire dismantled brick by brick. Deputy Mayor Harris, too, faced justice. Though cooperating, he couldn't escape punishment. Charged with bribery and conspiracy, he faced years in prison, his political career finished. Yet, what truly marked the city's healing was the sense of unity that blossomed. Alicia had become more than just a local hero. She symbolized hope, strength, and integrity. Community meetings, previously held in fear and anger, were now vibrant, positive gatherings filled with optimism and determination. Alicia used her newfound influence wisely. She spoke at schools, community centers, and public forums, encouraging young people to believe in their voices. "Never doubt your power," she told them passionately. "Each of us can change the world if we dare to speak the truth." One evening, the neighborhood held a community celebration. Families gathered in the streets, food was shared, music played joyfully. Alicia stood among them, watching children playing happily, parents chatting warmly, smiles abundant. It was a beautiful sight, community resilience shining brightly. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Alicia returned to the courthouse weeks later. Invited to a ceremony honoring her courage, she stood before a packed audience, judges, lawyers, city officials, and citizens. Stepping to the podium, Alicia began softly. "Just weeks ago, I stood in this very building, facing a system that often felt hopelessly rigged. Today I stand here, knowing that justice, truth, and courage can prevail." The audience erupted into applause. Cameras flashed, reporters listened eagerly. Alicia continued firmly. "Yet, this victory isn't mine alone. It belongs to each of you who stood beside my family, who refused to stay silent, who chose bravery over fear. Together we prove that no one, not even the most powerful, can silence truth." As Alicia concluded her speech, Judge Eleanor Harris approached her, presenting a formal certificate of commendation. "Ms. Bennett," Judge Harris said warmly, "your determination and integrity remind us all what justice truly means. We owe you our deepest gratitude." Alicia accepted humbly, meeting Judge Harris's gaze steadily. "Thank you, Your Honor. But this is just the beginning. There is so much more work to do." As the ceremony ended, Alicia walked through the courthouse corridors, reflecting deeply. Suddenly, she paused outside the chambers once occupied by Judge McKinley. The door was now closed, sealed with police tape, a stark reminder of what had occurred. Taking a deep breath, Alicia turned away, moving forward resolutely. Her mission was clear. This moment marked the beginning of a lifelong commitment, a commitment to fight corruption, defend the innocent, and inspire others never to surrender to injustice. Outside, Detroit's skyline shimmered proudly against the sunset, reflecting a city reborn, stronger than ever. Alicia stepped onto the courthouse steps, greeted by cheers from those gathered. She raised her hand, waving graciously, her heart full of gratitude. Her family stood close by, Anthony, Grace, Jamal, and Nina, all smiling broadly, united in triumph. Together, they represented hope, a beacon illuminating the path forward for generations to come. Alicia whispered softly to herself, feeling her grandmother's presence nearby. "Grandma, I promise this is just the beginning. Your legacy will live on, through me and countless others you've inspired." In that moment, Alicia Bennett knew her path was just unfolding, guided by an unwavering commitment to justice, a commitment unbreakable, unyielding, and eternal. In the weeks following the trial, life began to shift dramatically for Alicia Bennett. Detroit, a city historically known for its resilience and strength, had found a new symbol of hope in this young, determined woman who dared to challenge the powerful and corrupt. Alicia found herself at the center of a media storm as news outlets, talk shows, and community organizations reached out, eager to speak with the inspiring teenager who had taken on injustice and won. One sunny afternoon, Alicia sat nervously in a well-lit television studio, awaiting her first national interview. Her heart raced, palms sweaty as makeup artists and technicians buzzed around her, adjusting lights and microphones. Her mother, Grace, stood nearby, giving her a reassuring smile. "Just be yourself, sweetheart," Grace whispered gently. "You've already done more than most people ever will." Alicia nodded, inhaling deeply. Suddenly, the host, a well-known national news anchor named Karen Mitchell, approached and shook Alicia's hand warmly. "It's an honor to meet you," Karen said genuinely. "Your story has moved the entire country." The cameras went live, the studio quieted, and Karen began. "Today we're joined by an extraordinary young woman whose courage and intelligence have ignited a movement for justice nationwide. Alicia Bennett, welcome." Alicia smiled modestly, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Thank you for having me." Karen leaned forward, her tone thoughtful. "Alicia, you faced immense pressure during your father's trial. Threats, public ridicule, intimidation from powerful people. How did you find the strength to keep going?" Alicia paused, reflecting deeply. "I found strength in knowing what was at stake. My father's innocence, yes, but also the integrity of our justice system and the belief that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. I also drew courage from my family, my community, and from my grandmother, who taught me that sometimes standing up for what's right is the only choice we have." Karen nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandmother, Evelyn Bennett, was a legendary civil rights attorney. How did her legacy influence your journey?" Alicia's eyes softened. "Every step of the way, she faced incredible challenges during a time when fighting injustice meant risking her life. She never backed down, never allowed anyone to silence her. Her stories and wisdom inspired me constantly. I felt her presence every day, guiding me through." Karen's eyes glistened with admiration. "You've become an inspiration to countless people, especially young people. Many viewers have reached out, asking what they can do to make a difference. What advice would you give them?" Alicia spoke passionately, her confidence growing. "Speak up. Believe in your voice. Change starts small. With every person who refuses to tolerate injustice, every person who chooses courage over silence. Never think you're too young or too small to make a difference. Each of us holds the power to change the world." The studio audience erupted into applause, moved by Alicia's sincerity and resolve. As the interview concluded, Karen leaned in, her microphone muted now. "Alicia, have you considered your future? You must have countless offers, scholarships, internships, opportunities in law." Alicia smiled shyly. "I have, and it's overwhelming. But my heart lies here, in Detroit. I want to continue fighting for my community. There's so much more work to do." Karen smiled approvingly. "Whatever you decide, this country is lucky to have someone like you." Alicia's newfound fame opened many doors, but the one she cherished most was the creation of the Evelyn Bennett Community Defense Fund. Inspired by Alicia's courage, local leaders, businesses, and residents rallied to establish this organization, dedicated to protecting vulnerable neighborhoods, providing free legal support, and empowering communities through education and advocacy. Alicia attended its inaugural ceremony, held at the local community center. Hundreds gathered: families, city officials, activists, and media representatives, all celebrating this historic moment. Alicia stood on the stage, her father Anthony, mother Grace, Jamal, and Nina proudly by her side. Addressing the crowd, Alicia spoke warmly, "Today isn't just about me or my family. It's about all of us. This fund is a testament to what happens when a community refuses to be silenced, refuses to bow to fear or corruption. My grandmother always believed in community power, and today we carry forward her legacy." The crowd cheered, many visibly moved. Alicia continued, "I promise to keep fighting, to ensure justice is never a privilege, but a fundamental right for every person in Detroit and beyond." As Alicia finished, she saw a group of teenagers standing nearby, looking at her in awe. She approached them warmly, asking, "What's your dream?" One girl, no older than 14, spoke shyly, "I want to be like you, a lawyer who fights for people." Alicia's heart swelled. "You can be even better. Never doubt it." She exchanged contact information with the group, offering to mentor them personally. It was the start of something deeply meaningful, Alicia becoming a guiding force for local youth, inspired by her journey. In the days that followed, Alicia's life remained busy but fulfilling. She balanced interviews and community work with her studies, determined to graduate with honors. Universities from across the country reached out, offering full scholarships, prestigious internships, and mentorship programs. Yet, Alicia carefully weighed her options, determined to stay true to her values and the needs of her community. One evening, while helping her mother cook dinner, the phone rang. Alicia answered, surprised to hear a familiar voice. "Hello, Alicia. This is Attorney General Laura Stevens." Alicia's heart skipped. "Attorney General Stevens, it's an honor." "No," Stevens replied warmly. "The honor is mine. Alicia, your work has caught national attention. Your courage, integrity, and skill are remarkable. I'd like to offer you an internship at my office in Washington, D.C. You'll have an opportunity to work directly on civil rights cases, learn from our top attorneys, and make a real impact nationwide." Alicia stood speechless, her mind racing. After a pause, she said respectfully, "I'm incredibly honored by your offer, but my heart is in Detroit. This city needs people who care deeply, who understand its struggles. I hope to work nationally someday, but for now, my focus remains here." Stevens responded gently, "Your dedication is inspiring, Alicia. The offer remains open whenever you're ready." After hanging up, Grace hugged her daughter tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You're choosing what you believe in. That's true strength." Alicia smiled warmly, feeling immense gratitude. She knew her path wasn't typical, but it felt right. As weeks turned into months, Alicia saw her community growing stronger. Young people flocked to her for advice, guidance, and inspiration. She began regular workshops, teaching teens about their rights, encouraging activism, and nurturing future leaders. One evening, a local school hosted an event honoring Alicia. The auditorium filled with students, teachers, parents, and community leaders. Alicia stepped onto the stage, overwhelmed by the turnout. She spoke from her heart. "When I stood in court, fighting for my father, I was terrified. But fear didn't stop me because I knew what was right. Each of you has that same strength, that same ability. Trust yourselves, be brave. Our future depends on your courage." The crowd erupted into applause, chanting Alicia's name. She stood there, humbled, realizing the incredible impact of her journey, not just in exposing corruption, but inspiring generations to stand up for justice. As the event ended, a young boy approached her hesitantly. "Miss Bennett," he said softly, I don't know much about law, but I know I want to help people like you did. Thank you for showing us it's possible." Alicia knelt, meeting his eyes gently. "It's always possible. Never forget that." He smiled, hope shining in his eyes. In that moment, Alicia Bennett knew her greatest victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was here, in these moments, inspiring young hearts, lighting flames that would ignite change for years to come. On a crisp autumn morning, golden leaves gently cascaded onto the quiet grounds of Detroit's historic Greenwood Cemetery. Alicia Bennett walked slowly along the winding path, the cool breeze whispering softly around her. Clutching a leather-bound folder tightly to her chest, she felt the familiar weight of both pride and longing in her heart. Today was a special day, one of reflection, gratitude, and a promise kept. Reaching her grandmother's resting place, Alicia paused, taking a deep breath. She knelt gently before the polished granite headstone, its inscription glistening in the soft sunlight. Evelyn Bennett, beloved mother, grandmother, and fearless advocate for justice. Alicia traced her fingers over the engraved words, memories flooding her mind. Evelyn's gentle smile, her fiery speeches, and the countless nights Alicia had fallen asleep, listening to her grandmother's stories of battling injustice and racism in Detroit during the Civil Rights era. "Hi, Grandma," Alicia whispered softly, her voice catching. "I did it. We did it." Opening the folder carefully, Alicia placed the official court documents from her victorious case beside Evelyn's grave. Pages detailed the acquittal of Anthony Bennett, the conviction of Victor Wainwright, and Judge McKinley's suspension. Each document symbolized not just a legal victory, but a triumph of hope, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. Tears welled in Alicia's eyes as she continued. "You always said justice wasn't just about the law. It was about courage. The courage to stand up, speak out, and fight, even when the world tells you to be silent. I finally understand what you meant." The quiet cemetery seemed to embrace her words, the gentle rustling of leaves providing a soothing backdrop to her thoughts. Alicia reflected deeply, recalling those early days when fear threatened to silence her. Yet the memory of her grandmother's steadfast courage had always urged her forward. "Grandma," Alicia continued, her voice stronger now, "your legacy lives on, not just in me, but in every person who refuses to be silenced. I promise you, I won't stop fighting. There are still so many battles ahead, so many voices needing to be heard. But because of you, I know I'm not alone." A soft gust of wind swirled around Alicia, lifting a single leaf onto her lap, as if Evelyn herself were gently acknowledging her granddaughter's vow. Alicia smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. Rising slowly, she dusted off her knees and stood tall. The quiet solitude of the moment was interrupted by the distant chime of her phone. Curious, Alicia reached into her coat pocket and answered hesitantly, "Hello?" "Alicia Bennett," came a poised, professional voice on the other end. "My name is Diane Morgan. I'm calling on behalf of the National Civil Rights Advocates Association." Alicia's heart quickened. "Oh, hello, Miss Morgan. What can I do for you?" The woman's voice softened warmly. "Alicia, we've been following your story closely. Your courage, integrity, and commitment to justice have deeply inspired our organization. We believe you embody exactly what our movement needs right now. Someone young, fearless, and driven by genuine conviction." Alicia listened carefully, her pulse racing, as Diane continued. "We're launching a new nationwide initiative focused on combating racial injustice, systemic corruption, and empowering youth advocates. We want you to be a central figure in this project, as a spokesperson, advisor, and leader. Stunned, Alicia struggled to find her voice. I don't know what to say. It's an incredible honor. The honor is ours, Alicia, Diane replied sincerely. Your story has already ignited a movement in Detroit. Imagine what it could do for communities across the country. Together, we can build something truly transformative. Alicia glanced back at her grandmother's grave, her resolve deepening. Taking a breath, she spoke with renewed determination. Miss Morgan, it would be a privilege to join you. If my experiences can inspire and support others, I'm ready to help. We're thrilled to have you, Diane said, excitement evident in her voice. You're a remarkable young woman, Alicia. The future of civil rights advocacy will be brighter with you leading the way. Ending the call, Alicia stood silently for a moment, absorbing the enormity of what had just happened. It felt as though destiny had chosen this moment to confirm what she'd always believed. Her fight was only just beginning. Yet now she stood not as a lone voice, but as part of something far greater. Turning once more to Evelyn's grave, Alicia whispered, "You were right, Grandma. Our voices matter. And now, they'll matter even more." With newfound determination, Alicia left the cemetery, walking back toward her car. Her thoughts raced with ideas, dreams, and the immense possibilities ahead. The challenges she'd faced had taught her that change was possible, no matter how daunting the obstacles. Her heart surged with excitement for the journey ahead, knowing this was exactly what her grandmother would have wanted. As she drove away, Alicia's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Jamal, who had just been accepted into a prestigious law program in Chicago. The message read, "Thanks for believing in me, Alicia. Couldn't have done it without you." She smiled, typing back, "You've always had it in you. We're just getting started." Minutes later, another message popped up. This time from a young girl she'd mentored, now determined to fight for environmental justice. "Thank you, Miss Bennett. Because of you, I know I can make a difference too." Alicia felt a warmth spreading through her chest. These young voices, inspired by her journey, were the seeds of a movement, a legacy of courage that would endure far beyond her own struggles. Returning home, Alicia found her parents waiting, proud smiles lighting their faces. Grace embraced her daughter tightly. "Alicia, we're so proud. You've become everything your grandmother dreamed of and more." Anthony, tears in his eyes, added gently, "You've changed this city, and now you're changing the world." Later that evening, Alicia sat quietly in her room, surrounded by photographs, awards, and letters from countless people whose lives she'd touched. Yet amidst all the praise and recognition, one simple note from her grandmother stood out most. It was written years ago, tucked away in an old book. "My darling Alicia, never forget the power within you. Courage is contagious. By standing up for what's right, you'll inspire others to do the same. That, my dear, is how change happens. Always with love, Grandma." Alicia clutched the note, heart overflowing with gratitude and purpose. She now understood the depth of Evelyn's words. Her journey was no longer about a single victory, but about empowering others to rise, speak, and fight for justice. It was about creating ripples of courage that would reach far beyond her own lifetime. That night, gazing out her window at the glittering city lights, Alicia felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, challenges inevitable, but she no longer felt afraid. She was ready to carry forward the legacy entrusted to her, ready to continue Evelyn's lifelong fight, ready to build a future where justice wasn't just an ideal, but a reality. Whispering softly into the quiet night, Alicia made a final promise. "I won't let you down, Grandma. This fight will never end. Not until justice is more than a dream, but a promise fulfilled. In that moment, she felt the gentle presence of Evelyn beside her, knowing her grandmother's spirit would always guide her steps, fueling the flames of courage and hope for generations to come. What did you think of Alicia's incredible journey? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for what's right, even when it seemed impossible? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click the bell icon so you won't miss out on our next powerful, heart-touching story. Remember, every voice matters. Together, we can make a difference. See you in the next one.